Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Buffalo Plus YouTube channel. Please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Mike Catalana back with you on this Saturday, getting ready for a Sunday game. I was out of commission this past week. Good news, it was for my daughter's wedding. We spent some time at her wedding in Gulf Shores, Alabama. If you've never been, got to tell you, big fan. I just said roll tide to everybody while I was down there, and they seemed to like it, but wedding went great. The Bills were nice enough to cooperate. The wedding was already planned to give me a bye week, so that's just the way it worked out. So Dan and Jenna held down the fort, and I am back for the Bills game against the Packers coming up on Sunday. So I wanted to take a couple minutes to talk a little bit because I talked a lot of wedding stuff for the week, and I got to pontificate a little bit, but it's not quite the same as talking to our friends on the Buffalo Plus YouTube channel. I will tell you this, people love the Buffalo Bills. I mean, I talked to people from all over the country. Wasn't that many people at the wedding, but I would run into people, and they love the Bills. They love watching them. They're excited for them. They're fans of other teams, but they like watching them play, and I think you kind of know that. You have that team this year, Josh Allen in particular, that people like to see play. So what I want to talk about is the 5 storylines coming into this game with the Packers. And this game is really something now because when the season schedule came out, I mean, you look and you go, Packers, Sunday night, Rodgers, Allen, this is going to be a lot of fun. And it might end up being a great game. Like, we don't know. But boy, the Packers just don't look like that same team. We'll get into talking about the Packers and what's going on with them. But let's start with the Bills. And the first storyline for me is going to be coming off the bye week. And I was looking back, and really it's the last few years, looking back on what the Bills have done in and out of the bye weeks, because you know what they came out of this year. I mean, it was that win on the road in Kansas City, an impressive performance. They got the victory. Then they got a little time off. You saw Josh Allen go out to San Diego, hanging at the baseball game, trying to root on the Padres. He was there. The game they won, and then my Phillies took care of them the rest of the way. They needed Josh to be there for the entire time, but guys get a little time away, right? That's a good thing. And I think to myself, like, how does this team come back out of the bye? Because they're playing well. They're healthy, relatively healthy, right? A couple guys out. We can mention that too. But you come off the bye where guys get time off. They do a little self-scouting. They try to figure things out. But the way this team was playing, you feel like they could step right back out there and go again. So how do they return from the bye? Now, I looked at it. The strange thing for the last 2 years, when you think about the bye, was 2 of their, I mean, they don't lose that many games, but 2 really tough losses in the last 2 years. Last year, they went into the bye after that loss in Nashville. You know, Josh trying to get the first down, slips and falls, whatever that play was. Everybody's got their opinion. They end up losing that tough game. Out of the bye that year, they beat the Dolphins. Okay? The year before, going into the bye, it was when they lost to the Cardinals on the crazy Hail Murray pass. And then you think, wow, they got to live with this for a little while. And they did for 2 weeks. And then they came back and they beat the Chargers. And then the year before that, and we'll really only go these 3 playoff years, they beat the Titans 14-7, winning that game in Nashville. That was a bit of an odd game, but they end up winning that one 14-7. I think the Titans missed like 4 field goals in that game. That was a Bills team, you know, made the playoffs and ended up playing in Houston that year. And they came out of the bye and they beat the Dolphins. So out of the byes have not been an issue. They went into them with tough losses and came back. So I think it's a mature team. I think they've got veterans around. I think they all know what to do. And coming back on a Sunday night against a name opponent, I'm not really concerned about that. Certainly not concerned about Josh Allen and how he will respond. I think the timing of the bye was probably pretty good, obviously coming off that game, but also, you know, first of all, Jordan Poyer doesn't have to drive 15 hours each way to get to this game. And you come back and you've got a team that will get your attention. And we'll talk a little bit about the Packers, but it's not like, you know, last year they won coming out of the bye, and then the week later went to Jacksonville and lost that game. Like, those are the kind of games. You have a game like that, and your attention span's not where it should be, and you lose. I don't worry about it with this coaching staff. I don't worry about it with this team. I look more at the opponent in this game because I think the Bills will be ready, and the crowd's going to be ready. Weather's supposed to be good. We're excited to be there. So let's just say that the Bills are fine coming out of it. And then you look at the team they're playing, the second thing, and it's Green Bay Packers. And you always think about the Packers as an elite team, because they've been. They've always seemed to have had a quarterback, but since Rodgers has been there, they rarely lose back-to-back games, right? Now they've lost 3 in a row, and it's beyond the point of just saying it's a little slump or, I know Rodgers came out confident about how they'll bounce back. He also takes his shots at his teammates or the coaches. I mean, that's Rodgers, and sometimes I think it helps him. He puts a little more of that focus out there on whether it's not always on himself, but on other people and gets them to step up. I just don't think this is a very good football team. And when you look at their roster, you say to yourself, if Arron Rodgers isn't elite and doesn't have really strong pass catchers, I don't see this as being even a good offense in the NFL, which is strange to say because while they've had problems in the playoffs, I mean, during the regular season, Rodgers has been, winning MVPs. He's been automatic. We know his best receiver's now playing for the Raiders, and they sort of easily let him walk. And you try to replace him, man, and you look at what they've got. When Lazard's your best receiver and he's out for this game, they've had problems. They drafted that Christian Watson. He's been nicked up. He's questionable. We don't know if he's going to play in the game. And Rodgers has been pedestrian this year. I mean, his numbers, they're not terrible. Interceptions to touchdown ratio, I think it's 11-3. But he's averaging like 225 yards a game in the air. They don't scare anyone passing the ball. And we're not used to that. Now, we know Rodgers came into Orchard Park, and it was the famous Bakari Rambo game where he got him twice. I think the Bills picked him off 3 times and won that game. The Packers have never won in Orchard Park. You got to go all the way back to before they were in Green Bay. So even I'm not old enough to remember that. But Packers have never won there. And, I've seen them, multiple times come in with different quarterbacks and, not win. And we saw Rodgers, when they had a good team, lose. So if you're the Packers, this is a stand here. You're double-digit underdogs on the road to the Bills. And the Bills and Arron Rodgers Josh Allen, are that team now that everybody's saying MVP Super Bowl team. So you want to come in, make a name for yourself? It's kind of funny to say that about Rodgers. You want to show everybody I'm still here? You want to be yelling at the fans like you're in Chicago, I own this place. Well, go ahead and play a good game. I just don't see it happening. Not against this Bills defense. I do not see the weapons there for Rodgers. He has Sammy Watkins. I have nothing against Sammy. Sammy was a decent guy, good football player, couldn't stay healthy. Obviously, it was a disappointment. You give up 2 picks and all that with the Bills. He's bounced around. He's won a Super Bowl. Yeah, I keep forgetting him when he was in Kansas City, yes, and won one. He's been with the Rams. He's been with good teams. Now he's with Green Bay. He says he's excited. He's like, this is the perfect place to play. I get it. He should be excited. I don't think most of you really care that much about Sammy right now, and you've got, Gabe Davis and Stephon Diggs and Josh Allen. But they just don't have the weapons at all. They don't have anybody that scares you on their offense. No wonder they're throwing for 225. And I think to myself, is Arron Rodgers still an elite quarterback? And one game, everybody has a bad one. Maybe 2, and maybe with the weapons, it's not scaring anybody. Their scheme's not scaring anybody. Honestly, the best thing they've probably done is run the football with Aaron Jones, has been a really good football player. He's averaging, what did I have it here? He's been averaging 5.5 yards a carry, but they don't run it enough to do that. And you want to run the ball? Go ahead. Is that the game plan you're going to have? Is this team, this quarterback, still that guy? I don't see it. And I don't see, when I watch him, I don't see that he's physically lost it. We've seen it in other guys, right? You may see it. We've seen it in Russell Wilson before that. Peyton, Eli, all those guys hit a wall. I don't see that in Rodgers. I just don't think he's connected. I don't think he was connected with the team in the offseason. They made those moves. They did not get him the right players around him. I think this is going to end badly in Green Bay. So it's not an elite team. Now, what they do have going for them is when the lights go on, that's when Rodgers has played well. It's kind of incredible. They've won 13 consecutive primetime games. And I've seen them a lot in primetime games. And you figure they play 4 or 5 a year. And I don't think about them losing the games. I remember it was a couple of years ago. I remember watching the Eagles go to Green Bay and somehow beat them. They didn't even play particularly well, and they beat them. That might have been the last time they lost. That was a few years ago to Carson Wentz and the Eagles. I think that was in the 18 season. But they've won 13 in a row. You know how you win primetime games a bunch in a row? When you're a really good team. Otherwise, it's just an aberration. A team, they'd have a streak, and it goes back 15 years. They had, 6 games back then, 3, 2 years later, that type of thing. No, the Packers play 4 or 5 every year, and they've been really good in the prime time. So don't think right now it's an elite quarterback, certainly not an elite offense, and not an elite team. In the last 3 weeks, you're talking about losing games to the Jets, the Giants, and the Washington Commanders. It's embarrassing to lose to that team, and they just aren't very good. So am I saying it couldn't happen? If the uniform said a different name on the back, I don't think you'd be worried at all. It's still Arron Rodgers, right? And Josh Allen owes him for the match. Rodgers made that big putt and beat him in the match. Maybe he should have been paying a little more attention to what was going on with his team than playing golf. Listen to me with the old man take, because I was probably playing golf that same day. But this isn't that team anymore. Now, if you're the Packers, maybe you should be running the ball more. Maybe you should be relying a little bit more on your defense. But the next thing I want to talk about is how the Bills' offense goes against them, and maybe a concern for this week. Spencer Brown is out. He was playing a little bit better till he hurt that ankle in Kansas City. And David Quessenberry now is the guy, and he's had his struggles playing. At the Miami game, I almost want to give a pass a little bit. That game was rough. It was rough for a lot of players. He did not play well when he came in after Brown was totally out of the game. And then he came in last week and he gave up a sack and, didn't play great. But he's gotten the practice reps now. He's a veteran who's been around. I think that'll be a big matchup. The Packers have a player who, at least statistically, Rashawn Gary, is playing at a high level. He's got 6 sacks already. And they'll try to get him matched up, I would think, with Quessenberry and see what kind of pressure they can put on. So if I was the Bills, I'd be watching to see what I'm getting out of that right tackle spot and making sure that we keep Josh Allen clean on Sunday. Otherwise, you plug in Gabe Davis, you plug in Stephon Diggs. You see what you do in the slot this week. That's going to be interesting too, in terms of, Isaiah McKenzie with another week. I love Isaiah. He had a bad game. He's had some bad moments this year. I'd like to see him use him a little differently, and let's see what ends up happening. But Khalil Shakir is going to play, and he's going to get snaps in the slot. So let's see how they mix it up this week and what they do. But if Josh Allen's got time, I think he's going to take care of business as far as what the Bills at that side of the offensive line. And to the next part on that defense, I mentioned the pass rush and trying to get pressure. They haven't forced turnovers. They have 2 picks, I think, all year, and they're vulnerable in the secondary. I think Green Bay thought they would have a really good defense this year. And again, you aren't playing. They played pretty well against Tampa, and then we're realizing Tampa stinks. That offense just isn't good. And then the last 3 weeks, again, the Giants are winning. Go Dable. They're not a great offense. Decent defense. The Jets are finding a way. Not a great offense. Decent defense. The Commanders are a mess. And they got Wentz out of there. Not a great offense. Okay defense. That's the last 3 weeks for this team. So I don't think the defense is good. I don't think they're playing well. And talk about complementary football. The offense is doing nothing. The defense isn't picking them up. And you're losing 3 consecutive games to teams you should beat. So I don't like the Packers defense either. You're so used to knowing that this team is good. And you think about it, and they're just not this year. They could all wake up on Sunday. I don't see it happening. And then the fifth thing I want to talk about is the trade deadline is coming. And I love the deadline now. The deadline used to be a dud. I guess, we'll say a dad joke and say the dud line because it used to be terrible. We'd say all this about the deadline. No players were moving. One guy would get dumped. Two'd get cut. It was nothing. No, there's guys out there. There's teams that are going to be looking to make some deals. And you hear about names like Jerry Jeudy out there. Would the Bills be interested? I don't know what kind of move Brandon Beane's going to make. I think they've been in on some guys looking around. I don't think they want to give up too much in assets, but at the same time, if you find a guy who's making a difference, go in, get him. Draft picks are great. This team's good. They're going to need the picks. I wouldn't overdo it. But if you find the right guy and you get him now and it helps you down the stretch and helps you to get that ring, worry about the draft pick at another time. I'm not saying like the Rams. They're not doing what the Rams did. The Rams traded all these ones and moved everybody around. I'm talking about third and fourth round picks that the Bills have been really good at. But if there's a player out there that helps you, makes this offense even more explosive, adds depth to the offensive line, maybe more of a power running back, all of these things, a veteran safety that's out there that you could bring in, there's guys out there, like a Rodney McLeod safety, been around the league. He's one of those kind of guys that maybe you'd be interested. I don't know. I'm throwing that name out there just because there's some spots that they could use a little help. I don't think they're desperate for anything, but, sometimes you look and you're saying, the LA Rams had Aaron Donald and they went out, and got Von Miller. And Von Miller was great for him in the playoffs, and they won a Super Bowl. So I don't think they regret that move at all, bringing in a guy. So we'll see. That's Tuesday. That's right. The 1st is the date of the deadline. So some of it could depend on what happens this week. There's always injuries. There's always other things. But I think it's going to be interesting to watch because then you're talking about the roster going forward. Then you're seeing, like we've seen, what other teams doing, trying to pick up some players like Kansas City, picking up wide receivers and, obviously in the NFC side, San Francisco getting Christian McCaffrey. So giving up a lot of picks there, but, they need even more weapons in terms of they don't have it in the passing game and they don't have it in the quarterback. So maybe they're going to end up being a running team. So we will see. Hey, look, I did a whole piece. It's still on here about the contenders around the league. You guys saw the Chiefs last week. They lit up the Niners like they're for real. So you can talk about every other team. When Brandon Beane is thinking on Tuesday, am I making this move? His mind is on what Kansas City's doing. There is no question in my mind because he knows at some point it's going to come down to those teams. So if it's a guy that helps him, go get him because this is a year he can win the Super Bowl. All right, that's going to do it for me right now. I'll be heading to the game. Looking forward to a Sunday night. I think the weather's going to be great. So let's see what ends up happening. The Bills back in the primetime this week. And again, complete coverage after the game. We'll be posting our videos and then our audio podcast, wherever you get podcasts, available when you get up in the morning on Monday. They're waiting for you to break down the game in a little different way. It's a little more informal. We'll have a little fun with that. So always look for that. And please, when you go there, download and give us a rating and all those things as we try to build up everything Buffalo Plus. Oh, and by the way, I'll give you a little hint. I don't know if Dan and Jenna talked about it, but we may be giving away a little bit of merchandise. Maybe, I don't know. We will let you know. We'll let you know how you might be able to get some of that. Maybe you can win some here on the channel. All right, that's going to do it for me now. I've missed pontificating. I'm back and doing it and having a little bit of fun. So for Dan, for Jenna, I'm Mike. Please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see you next time on Buffalo Plus.